Nasta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavati shevaya bhagavate tamashloke bhakti bharati nashtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering the service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established and irrevocable fact. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotanam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirarit. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Prabhupada Ki Jai. Can this microphone be adjusted a little bit because it's hard for me to see my screen? Maybe back a little bit. A bit better. Kind of annoying, that thing. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Is everyone here, or has anyone here not been to a Bhagavatam class before? I think everyone has been attending. So Srimad Bhagavatam is something that we do every morning in every temple all around the world for those who are new here. So this morning we're reading from 2nd Canto, Chapter 8, starting from text 10 and finishing at text 14. The reason for this is that some of the verses don't have a purport and some of the verses just have a very, very short purport. And so traditionally, if there's no purport, then we don't speak on the verse. So we'll recite 2-8-10. Sa chapi yatra purusho Vishvastitudbhava praya Muktvatma maya mayesha Seti sarva guhashaya Sa chapi yatra purusho Vishvastitudbhavaya pya Muktvatma maya mayesha Seti sarva guhashaya. Gentlemen?
Sachapi yatra purusho
Sachapi yatra purusho Vishvastitudbhavaya pyaya Muktvatma maya mayesha Seti sarva guhashaya. Repeating the synonyms. Saha, he, cha, also, api, as he is, yatra, where, purusha, the personality of Godhead, vishva, the material worlds, sthiti, maintenance, udbhava, creation, apyaya, annihilation, muktva, without being touched, atma mayam, own energy, maya isha, the Lord of all energies, shete, does lie on, sarva guha shaya, one who lies in everyone's heart. Translation, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Please also explain the personality of Godhead, who lies in every heart as the Supersoul and as the Lord of all energies, but is untouched by his external energy. Please repeat. Please also explain the personality of Godhead, who lies in every heart as the Supersoul and as the Lord of all energies, but is untouched by his external energy. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Undoubtedly, the form of the Lord, who was seen by Brahma, must be transcendental. Otherwise, how could he simply look upon the creative energy without being touched? It is understood also that the same Purusha lies in the heart of every living entity. This also requires proper explanation. So yesterday Manibandha Prabhu mentioned in his class that this chapter is presenting lots and lots of questions by Maharaj Parikshit to Shukadeva Goswami. And this happened as he sat by the bank of the Ganges, as we've been hearing. And he's getting ready for that final moment that's scheduled in 7 days. So he hasn't been counting down when's the next, big feast, or when's the next homages coming in from, the kings from far away, but he's counting down to the final moment. And in many ways, as devotees, that is what we're practicing. We're practicing that big countdown for when the test of our devotional practice comes to the fore. So and in the next chapter, the answers are provided. So Maharaj Parikshit, he began his inquiries to Shukadeva Goswami with 2 of the most important questions of all. Can anyone remember what those 2 questions are?
What is the duty of present living?
Yes. Tell me of the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are just about to die. So he wasn't wasting time, he was just getting right to the crux of the matter. What is the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically for one who is about to die? And as spiritual practitioners, we are quite centred on death. We think about it every day, we talk about it all the time, but it's done in a way that's actually, strange to say, it's almost joyful. It's not that, personally, I'm not looking forward to death, but in a way it's like, okay, I wonder what will happen. Will I be able to remember Krishna? Will I be able to remember Srila Prabhupada? And that we hear from different devotees' experiences that Srila Prabhupada has actually come to take devotees. Even devotees who have given, many years of their lives to Srila Prabhupada, but due to unfortunate circumstances, they've left the association of devotees and maybe have even engaged in quite sinful activities. And I can think of one case in particular. And Prabhupada actually came. And this particular devotee, just as he was leaving his body, he had medical staff around him, and he sat up and said, "Oh, Prabhupada, you have come." So we, at the same time that we're, trying to prepare ourselves, and it's the final big test, and Prabhupada does say that we have to be brave because it's not pleasant, the time of death. The physical body suffers a great deal. That's why the soul actually leaves the body, because the body is no longer a tenable place of residence. But for a devotee, we can feel very confident that Krishna and Prabhupada are going to do everything they can to help us remember Krishna. And I remember in Mayapur, I was in a very, very serious accident, a speeding motorbike going on the wrong side of that little narrow Bhaktisiddhanta Marg hit me on my push bike. And when I saw that, it was a very big speeding motorbike, and when I saw that bike coming towards me, everything kind of slowed down. It was very strange. And I remember thinking, Krishna, so this is how I die. I really thought I was going to leave my body. But somehow or other, by the grace of Krishna, I did remember him, and which was quite remarkable for someone like me. And when then the bike hit, and I just had 2 broken ribs, and luckily no other internal damage. But it felt very reassuring to me actually that, okay, there's a possibility that I might be able to remember Krishna and Prabhupada at the time of death. And as Prabhupada wrote in a letter, he says that everyone who's in this material world has got material problems. So who hasn't got the problem of birth? Who hasn't got the problem of disease?
Who hasn't got the problem of old age? And for those of us who are, our bodies are aging, we've got, many problems that start besetting us. And who hasn't got the problem of death? So we're all in the same boat. It's just a matter of time. Chaitanya Bhav will no doubt live way past my demise, but eventually you will also face that final test. So our lives are meant for that preparation. That's why we're developing our devotion for Krishna. Not just because we want to have, I just want to make sure that I don't take birth again. We're doing it out of love for Krishna. We're trying to develop our love for Krishna and for Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters. But we know that this is a preparation, that we're practicing in our minds to be thinking of Krishna 24/7. That's the ultimate goal, to always have Krishna there in our consciousness. And so, our activities are preparing us for doing this, meeting this final challenge. Hopefully it's a final challenge. So getting back to Maharaj Parikshit, as you know, he was the son of, who was he the son of? Any of the new ladies? Steph, do you know who Maharaj Parikshit was the son of? Abhimanyu. And Abhimanyu was the son of Arjuna. And Arjuna, of course, is one of the 5 Pandavas. So he was born after his father had been killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And he was a very great, very just king. And in his empire, he was the empire of the world, there were no problems. There was no, unfair taxation. There was no, every citizen, every animal, including the animals, were taken care of very nicely. Not like in our present situation. Things are very unfortunate. And then there's another question for you all, paying attention during all these Bhagavatam classes. So how did Maharaj Parikshit get himself cursed? I'm doing that very annoying thing when speakers ask questions of the audience, but sometimes it's good to shake us up.
Shringi?
Yes. And why did Shringi curse him?
Because he went into his father's hermitage when he was meditating, and he got really upset because the sage didn't pay attention to him, although the sage was meditating. So he took the snake and threw it on his father's head.
Yes, very good. So Raja Mataji is explaining to us that Maharaj Parikshit, because he's a Kshatriyas go out in the forest and they prepare, keep their battle skills, their fighting skills up to date, so they are allowed to hunt animals. And he was very thirsty and exhausted. And he went to the hermitage of the sage Shamika. And Shamika, as Raja Prabhu was explaining, was in deep, deep meditation. But Maharaj Parikshit was very thirsty, and he kept on repeatedly asking him, give me some water, give me some water. And of course, Shamika was in deep, deep meditation, didn't hear him, previous time. So then, enraged, the king got a dead snake and draped it around the shoulder of Shamika Rishi. And the Rishi's son, Shringi, was quite very protective of his father, so he cursed Maharaj Parikshit. So that's the external reasons for those happening. But of course we can understand Maharaj Parikshit was a very self-controlled, great devotee himself, that all of this was the arrangement of Krishna, so Srimad Bhagavatam could be spoken. And of course the death that he was faced with wasn't a very, very pleasant death. He was going to be bitten by the great snake bird, Takshaka. So this gigantic, it's called a snake bird because he could fly. And when I was a younger devotee, I heard, I don't know how authentic this is, but I'd heard that the Tathagata was so old, he was such an old cobra, that his hoods had grown into wings. But I can't verify that with any sastric reference, it's just something that he heard. But he didn't actually rail against the curse. You know, many of us, we might get some, you know, news of our terminal illness, and it might be very hard for us to accept. But Maharaj Parikshit he could have counteracted the curse, he was so powerful, but he said no, you know, I'm not going to reverse it. I have full faith in the protection of the Lord. And so what did he do immediately? Did he have his bucket list? You would have all heard about the bucket list, I'm sure. Okay, people get news, I'm going to leave my body. Oh, okay, I want to go on a hot air balloon ride. I want to go to the Eiffel Tower. I want to do this. I want to go up the Amazon River. They have all of these different things they term the bucket list. The last things to do before they kick the bucket, so to speak. But of course, Maharaj Parikshit, he didn't do that. He immediately thought, you know, what is the duty of everyone in all circumstances, and especially for the person who is about to die. So in this purport, Prabhupada's explaining the transcendental nature of the form that Lord Brahma saw, and he explains that the Purush lies within the heart of the living entity. And if you have a look in Bhagavad Gita chapters 7 to 12, we learn about Krishna's plenary expansions, or his full expansions. And one of these is explained in this particular purport, and that's the Paramatma, the super soul, the Purush that lies in the heart. And for the purposes of material creation, just like Manibandha Prabhu was explaining yesterday, there's 3 forms of Vishnu. Karana-daksha Vishnu, Kava-daksha Vishnu, sometimes known as Hiranyagarbha super soul, and Paramatma, or the Shira-daksha Vishnu. So the first one, Mahavishnu, or Karana-daksha Vishnu, as we learnt yesterday, and it's good to review. He lies down, he actually creates the total material energy, the Mahat Tattva. And I was listening to a lecture this morning that Prabhupada gave, and he refers to the Mahat Tattva as a stock. It's like the warehouse, the stock of all the different material elements that will go into the creation. So Mahavishnu, or Karana-daksha Vishnu, he lies down in this causal ocean. And it's also known as Karana Jal. So this Mahatattva is assembled in one little corner of this vast spiritual sky, the Paravyoma. The spiritual sky is called the Paravyoma. So it's just a tiny little corner of that vast spiritual sky. And that's the Mahatattva, and that's the material sky, the Mahatattva. And if you remember, you may remember in a class I gave last month, we were talking about the sizes or the numbers of the planets and the universes. And I was giving the example that Prabhupada gives, that it's like, one universe is like a bucket of tiny, tiny mustard seeds. And that resembles the quantity of planets in the particular universe. So it's really vast, and they're innumerable, but they just form a portion of that entire manifestation. So it's beyond our comprehension, really. So Prabhupada explains that the Nityabadhas, or the conditioned souls, those who want to be in competition with the Lord, against the Lord's will. Sometimes Krishna likes competition. The cowherd boys are always in competition with Krishna. They're enjoying themselves very much. But those who are in competition against Krishna's will, so they're placed into this Mahat Tattva. So Krishna's saying, okay, you want this fairyland? You can have your fairyland. You can try and enjoy away from me. But just like, the kind father, he tries to instruct the child, don't do this is not going to be good for you. The child goes, no, I still want to do it. I'm leaving home. Can't tell me what to do anymore. And still the father is overlooking, still the father is trying to help him. So that's a little bit like us in our conditioned state. And I was listening to something Prabhupada said recently. He was talking to a guest, and he was saying that just like a child has a fairyland, so the child has, a position where he's trying to enjoy like anything. He doesn't want to go to school. He doesn't want to eat anything except lollies. He just wants to play all day. And so Prabhupada explained that the adults also have their fairyland, where they're trying to enjoy, they're trying to get ahead, they're trying to make success, achieve success. They're making all these external arrangements that, depending on their karma, they'll either enjoy or they'll suffer. So Prabhupada likened it to a fairyland, which I thought was a really interesting analogy. And then the second Vishnu is, what is the second Vishnu? Harvadaksha Vishnu, thank you. And he's also known as Hiranyagarbha Super Soul in some places. And he enters into all the universes. So Mahavishnu creates all the universes, just like the little golden bubbles that Manibandha was referring to yesterday. And then Garbhadaksha Vishnu enters into the universe. And he fills up half of each universe with his own perspiration. But because his body is transcendental, perspiration is not like our perspiration. It's very beautiful and transcendental. And he lies down. And what does he do? It's such a wonderful thought that he's relaxing in this wonderful water, lying down on the coils of the great snake, Anantasesha. And Anantasesha is also an expansion, but in the mood of servitor. So the Anantasesha, it's described, he has thousands and thousands of mouths, eyes, hands, and legs actually. And even though he's got thousands of mouths, he can't reach the end of the recitation of the glories of Krishna. That's how wonderful Krishna is. So he's that devotee incarnation of Godhead, and he knows nothing but service to the Lord. And then the third is Kshirodaksha Vishnu, or Paramatma, and he enters into each atom and also into the heart of every living entity. And I remember many, many years ago, I was talking to my sister, who is a very dedicated Catholic. She always go to Mass, and she's a very pious lady. And I was trying to explain to her about karma, how God is witnessing. And she goes, no, the Vatican has just released an ecclesiastical paper, and the Vatican is saying that, I don't know what they're saying now, but that's what she told me, going back 30 years. She said that God is not ubiquitous, he doesn't know everything. I thought, oh really, that's interesting. So God, who's all-powerful, all-knowing, you're saying he actually has faults that he doesn't know? She goes, yes, he doesn't know everything. He's not, ubiquitous means everywhere. So I thought that was very interesting. So, and Prabhupada also explains, when he's talking about this Paramatma and the other forms of the Lord, he says that this subject about the transcendental form of the Lord is often misunderstood, just like Prabhupada's mentioning in his purport about that transcendental nature. So they have a wrong understanding of the Paramatma and the wrong understanding of the Jiva Atma. The Jiva is the living entity, the marginal energy. So the wrong concept of the Jiva Atma is to identify the material body with the pure soul. We think we are this body, and our lives are dedicated to learning how to understand that we are not this body. But we're so enmeshed in that whole idea of ahankara, that our false ego, that is very hard to extricate. And one of my senior godbrothers told me once that another senior godbrother of ours had said to him, so Prabhu, now you've been practicing Krishna consciousness for almost 50 years, so tell me, what is your realization? Have you realized your Siddha Swarup, your pure form, your spiritual form? And my godbrother, who was asked that question, said, he said, I'm now just coming. I can see I'm just coming to the platform. He said, I haven't reached it yet, but I'm just coming to the platform where I understand that I'm not this body. And he told me that the other devotee who'd asked him that question looked very disappointed. It's like, that's all. But it's actually everything. All of the other realizations, like what is our eternal spiritual form, we don't have to try and do particular practices to remember that. That comes automatically in a pure state, just like a young boy and a young girl. They don't have to be taught how to be attracted to each other. Prabhupada gives that example. It's just natural, it's automatic. So understanding of what our eternal spiritual form is, that will just automatically unfold once we reach the pure state. So we've got this false identification, and it's apparent every day in our dealings with others, with our dealings with our mind. And then the wrong conception of Paramatma is to think that he's the same as the living entity. So the two misunderstandings, we think that we're this body, and we can think that the Lord, when he comes to this material world, takes on a material body. But in the next chapter, Prabhupada explains that with one stroke of Bhakti Yoga, all of those misconceptions can be removed. So we go on to verse 11. I talked a lot on like 4 lines, didn't I? I'll just read it. Purushavaya veloka sapala purvakalpita loke amusha vayava sapale iti sushrama. A learned Brahmana, it was formally explained that all the planets of the universe with their respective governors are situated in the different parts of the gigantic body of the Virata Purush. I have also heard that the... Oh, did I miss something? I did miss one, didn't I? Sorry. I didn't put that in. Oh yeah, I am right. Okay. Sorry about that. O learned Brahma, it was formally explained that all the planets of the universe with their respective governors are situated in the different parts of the gigantic body of the Virat Purusha. I have also heard that the different planetary systems are supposed to be in the gigantic body of the Virata Purush. But what is the actual position? Will you please explain that? He's asking such deep, profound philosophical questions. He's not freaking out at all that I'm going to die in 7 days. I have to give up all my opulences. And because there's no purport to this, then I'll just go on to text 12. Yavan kalpo vikalpo va yata kalo namiyate bhutta bhavya bhavachchabda ayumanam chayatsaha. And the translation to this is, also please explain the duration of time between creation and annihilation, and that of other subsidiary creations, as well as the nature of time, indicated by the sound of past, present and future. Also, please explain the duration and measurement of life of the different living beings known as the demigods, the human beings, etc., in different planets of the purport. And Prabhupada's given a very short purport there. And his purport is, past, present and future are different features of time to indicate the duration of life for the universe and all its paraphernalia, including the different living beings and different planets. So Krishna's name, fame, his qualities, his paraphernalia, his associates, they exist eternally. They're unaffected by time. Time has no effect on them. And he explains later to Lord Brahma that he was existing before creation, and after annihilation he remains. So Krishna is completely, beyond any effect of time. And then in relation to time, there are 2 kinds of annihilation. So there's annihilation or dissolution at the end of Brahma's very long day. And then after he has a sleep, he wakes up and again the creation happens. So during that time when the end of Brahma's day, his night begins, all of the creation, all of the jivas, they remain compact within the body of Vishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And then when Lord Brahma wakes up, they're again manifest at the beginning of his new day. So all the elements then unfold and creation begins again. And then the second annihilation or the second dissolution happens at the end of Brahma's long life, which is calculated at 100 years of his time. And that's where all the planetary systems, including the heavenly planets, previous dissolution was just the lower planetary systems. But at the end of his life, then all the systems, the planetary systems, are destroyed. And they enter into the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And then for millions and millions of years, the jivas remain unmanifest. They're still there in the body of Lord Vishnu. And, you know, we spoke yesterday about the long duration of Brahma's day, which is 4,320,000,000 years. His night's the same. He lives for 100 years. So his total lifespan is 311,040,000,000,000 years. So we all got that? We're lucky if we live for 100 years of our time. Very lucky. Some people do live to 100, but very, very rare. And I think the Queen sends out a letter if you've lived to 100. And just regarding time, because Prabhupada's touched on it here, there's a very wonderful poem by Bhaktivinoda Thakur that I came across years ago, and I really love it. So whenever I'm having any kind of a crisis in my life, I always remember this verse, and it goes, "Forget the past, it sleeps, and near the future dream it all, but act in times that are with thee, and progress thee shall call." So don't worry about what's happened in the past. Don't worry about the future, actually. But focus on what's happening now, and then you'll make advancement. So we may have all made mistakes in the past. We may even make mistakes in the future. But just focus now to rectify, our faults, and then we'll make progress. And then text 13, there's no purport. I'll read it quickly. Kalasyanugati yatu lakshate niviprihatyapi yavatya karmagatayo yadrishye dvijasatama. O purest of the Brahmanas, please also explain the cause of the different durations of time, both short and long, as well as the beginning of time, following the course of action. And then we come to the final verse that does have a purport. Yasmin kanama samavayo yata yeno pagridyate gunanam guninam chaiva parinamam abipsatam. The translation is, then again, kindly describe how the proportionate accumulation of the reactions resulting from the different modes of material nature act upon the desiring living being, promoting or degrading him among the different species of life, beginning from the demigods down to the most insignificant creature. And I think I'll just have time to read that purport and maybe a minute to talk on that. It is a bit of a long purport, so maybe I don't have time for the purport. The actions and reactions of all works in the material modes of nature, either in the minute form or in the gigantic form, are accumulated, and thus the result of such accumulated actions and reactions of karma become manifested in the same proportion. How such actions and reactions take place, what the different procedures are, and in what proportion they act are all subject matters of Maharaj Parikshit's inquiries from the great Brahmana Sukadeva Goswami. Life in the high planets, known as the abodes of the denizens of heaven, is obtained not by the strength of spacecraft, as is now being contemplated by the inexperienced scientists, but by works done in the mode of goodness. Even on the very planet where we are now living, there are restrictions upon the entrance of foreigners into a country where the citizens are more prosperous. And don't we know that with the difficult immigration laws? For example, the American government has many restrictions for the entrance of foreigners from less prosperous countries. The reason is that the Americans do not wish to share the prosperity with any foreigner who has not qualified himself as a citizen of America. Similarly, the same mentality is prevailing in every other planet, where there are more intelligent living beings residing. The higher planetary living conditions are all in the mode of goodness, and anyone desiring to enter the higher planets like the Moon, Sun and Venus must qualify thoroughly by activity in complete goodness. Maharaj Parikshit's inquiries are on the basis of proportionate actions of goodness, which qualify one in this planet to be promoted to the highest regions of the universe. Even on this planet of our present residence, one cannot achieve a good position within the social order without being qualified with proportionate good work. One cannot forcibly sit on the chair of a High Court judge without being qualified for the post. Similarly, one cannot enter into the higher planetary systems without being qualified by good works in this life. Persons addicted to the habits of passion and ignorance have no chance of entering the higher planetary systems simply by an electronic mechanism. According to the statement of the Bhagavad Gita 9:25, persons trying to qualify themselves for promotion to the higher heavenly planets can go there. Similarly, persons trying for the Pitrilokas can go there. Similarly, persons trying to improve the conditions on this earth can also do that, and persons who are engaged in going back home, back to Godhead, can achieve that result. The various actions and reactions of work in the mode of goodness are generally known as pious work with devotional service, culture of knowledge, and at last, I missed a line. Culture of knowledge with devotional service, mystic powers with devotional service, and at last, devotional service unmixed with any varieties of goodness. This unmixed devotional service is transcendental and is called Bhada Bhakti. It alone can promote a person to the transcendental kingdom of God. Such a transcendental kingdom is not a myth, but is as factual as the moon. One must have transcendental qualities to understand the kingdom of God and God himself. So we can't demand to see God. We have to have the qualifications to see God. And what is that qualification? It's pure in heart. And Prabhupada points out here that the results of our good or bad activities are accumulative. It's not that at the end of our life, all of the slates wiped clean. No, we have to, all of those desires and results of our sinful activities or our pious activities are stored in the subtle body. And of course we know what that's called. It's called karma. Good karma, bad karma. And Ramai Maharaj, when he gave class last week, I think it was, he was talking about the two kinds of karma, the prarabdha and the aparabdha. So prarabdha is that manifest karma, what we're suffering now. Like my legs are getting really stiff, I'm suffering some karma there. And aparabdha is the karma that we'll experience in the future. And Prabhupada in the 4th canto describes the effects of fruit activities. It's being reserved in the subtle body, as I mentioned. And then when the jiva gets a new body after the death of that current body, the laws of karma again come into effect. And what's really unfortunate, we've got one benefit in Kali Yuga, that we don't get bad karma for our thoughts. But we also have to remember, just like Krishna explains in the Gita, thinking, feeling, willing. So if we let our bad thoughts have free rein in our minds, that's eventually going to manifest in action. And the other thing that's quite negative is that when we seek sense enjoyment, the result, or sinful sense enjoyment, the result of that, the bad karma resulting in that, is not commensurate with what we've actually enjoyed. It's actually higher, it's worse. So you might think, okay, well I'll just do this and yeah, I'll get a little bit of bad karma for it. No, you'll get much more bad karma than what that original sinful activity was from your little bit of enjoyment. And it's kind of like quite unfair in many ways, but it's just Kali Yuga. And then in that same purport in 4th canto 2973, Prabhupada talks about how the effects of the karma is reserved in the subtle body, and he also goes into more categorization, not just prarabdha and aparabdha. He talks about bija, which is the seed. He talks about the desire, kutastha, and then the karma about to fructify, which is phalamukha. So when one commits sinful activities, along with that actual action, the desire to sin stays in the heart and manifests again. So it's not like you do something wrong, you rectify yourself and it's done and dusted. No. By those sinful activities, that desire to sin remains in the heart, and one has to be very, very careful to root it out. But what's wonderful about Krishna consciousness is that there's no need for prayaschitta or atonement. We have to, hate the sin, not the sinner, and, pull up our socks and vow never to behave in a abominable way again, and take back, our right to serve Krishna. So that's very important, because, in other spiritual practices there may be lots of, atonement that one has to perform. But in Krishna consciousness, it's simply you take up the practice again. It's one of the wonderful things. And when the devotee suffers ostensibly what looks like karma, bad karma, for example, he or she's not suffering ordinary karma. He's actually suffering, particularly for the initiated devotees, he's actually suffering Krishna karma. It's like Krishna has created this perfectly custom-made curative treatment for you, because he's there in our heart as Paramatma. So he's taking in hand, he's thinking, okay, this devotee has to have some realizations. I'm going to prescribe this curative action for their betterment. So once Prabhupada got a small paper cut, and he said, I should have actually had, either my arm cut off or something like that, but Krishna minimized. So Krishna always minimizes the reactions that a devotee has to suffer. And I was listening to a Prabhupada memory yesterday, and Dvaipayan Prabhu, who's a godbrother of mine, lives in Sydney. He was saying this, one of the first personal services he did for Prabhupada was he was given a flower with a little bit of chandan paste, and he was told, you go to Prabhupada's room and you can put the chandan on Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, reached out for the bit of chandan, and he put a little bit on his forehead, and then he put on he had a small cut, and he put that sandalwood paste on his finger, because the cut was causing Prabhupada some difficulty. And then later, Dvaipayan describes, later Prabhupada said that he was experiencing some pain due to all the devotees not following his instructions properly. So when the spiritual master suffers some illness or some setback like that, it can be understood it's not the result of any sinful activities on his part, but on the sinful activities of his disciples. So when one takes initiation, one has to take that contract, that spiritual contract, very seriously, and not want to inflict suffering on the spiritual master. And Prabhupada says that because the spiritual master, by his unlimited mercy, at the time of initiation, he takes all the karma, he takes it away. And because of Prabhupada's strong, pure devotion, he was able to burn up that karma. But sometimes, he said, you'll get some pain. And after that particular instant, Prabhupada made the rule that only Brahmin devotees are allowed to cook for the deities. And Dvaipayan, actually Siddhartha Das says in his book, Memories, Anecdotes of a Modern Day Saint, he asked, when you get initiated, is your karma stopped? Prabhupada said, yes. It's like the electric fan is rotating, action, reaction, or karma. But on initiation, the plug is pulled. The rotations may go on for a little while, but there's really no more karma. So, we can understand that the Lord is very, very merciful. And Krishna comes, himself sometimes arranges our purification. And the devotee, he doesn't think, oh Krishna, why are you doing this to me? Why is this bad thing happening to me? He never rails against Krishna. But rather, what does the devotee do? The devotee says, oh Krishna, I deserve much worse, and you've minimized what I actually have to suffer. Thank you so much. And when things are going well, where we're not particularly suffering, any particular thing, the devotee thanks Krishna. Oh, I'm not sick, circumstances are good, how can I serve you more? So that's the mentality of the devotee. So time's up. Thank you very much for patiently listening. Is there any corrections, comments? Krishna Jan Prabhu? And I did want to read that poem, but it's quite long from that Forget the Past That Sleeps, but I'll read it another time. It's really, really nice.
First question, you mentioned a few types of karma that we have. You also mentioned that at the time of initiation, karma is being erased. So the question is, what type of karma is being erased?
Oh, you're in that context, one would say your bad karma, because your good karma is the fact that you've come to Krishna consciousness. So that's actually the ultimate, the ultimate perfect result of pious activities. And it's explained sometimes, we come because of past pious activities. Sometimes it's ajñata sukriti, it's just by the mercy of the Guru. So my understanding is that it's the bad karma that it's erased. If anyone...
Is it aparabdha or prarabdha or any other type of karma? I mean, good and bad is some
it's my understanding is that it's all karma. It's the karma that is lying in the heart as seed, the karma that's not yet manifest. He removes that karma. And Prabhupada gives that example that in the fan it can still be rotating. And there might be some, like chuk, gachuk, gachuk. But for the devotee, he thinks this is a curative treatment, personalised. I used to work in custom publishing, and we would create a bespoke publication specifically for a company, meeting their criteria, their mission statement, etc., etc. So Krishna, he customises something for us that, will wake us up. Sometimes Krishna gives us a kick.
It doesn't mean that we're old from bad karma, because we can be initiated at say 1 p.m. Once we have did some bad thing, so we started creating our bad karma again.
Oh yes, it's not like you get a free pass card that now you're initiated no matter what you do, you're hunky dory. No, if we misstep, then we are actually again creating more, and it's not that just that we would be suffering, but we have to understand that we're causing suffering to our spiritual master. Just like Prabhupada said here, that he got the cut on his finger because his disciples were not following. And I remember another time Srila Prabhupada had a fever, and he said the same thing. So it behooves us as disciples, grand disciples of Prabhupada, grand disciples of Prabhupada. It's our responsibility that we don't want to cause our spiritual master suffering, because he has agreed to take that on. And of course, if a disciple is willfully, constantly disobeying the instructions of you know, the path of sadhana bhakti, then that contract gets ripped up. Rupa Prabhu?
My understanding was that at initiation, good karma is taken away as well, because, like Prabhupada said, good karma, good karma, it's all bad. Because even good karma, you know, takes you to another birth in this world, and like Prabhupada said, you know, maybe it's compared to be like a prisoner bound with golden handcuffs, like good karma is, bad karma is like bound with iron handcuffs. So wouldn't it be that the good karma is taken away?
I don't have any sastric evidence to support that. Manibanda Prabhu, have you come across that? I just presumed that it was, you know, the negative karma.
Yeah, well, I would understand that it's all types of karma, good and bad, because unless we are able to dissolve our good karma, we do have to come back to receive the fruits of that. But Bani Swami, he mentioned a seminar he gave on Madhurikram, that when you take initiation, it's not so much that the spiritual master takes all the karma away, but you're entering into a contract with the spiritual master that you're sharing in reactions. And he gave an example of the process from Shraddha to Prema, that we go through the step of Anattamavritti. So if all the karma and all the sinful desire seeds are gone, we won't have to go through that stage.
In Nectar of Devotion, it does state that, I mean, you know, there's different slants on the philosophy. It's not that, you know, it's something stated in one place and there's not another nuanced. It's nuanced, but I do remember reading in Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada states that the spiritual master at the time of initiation does take all the karma. But then I've also heard that. But, you know, suffice to say that initiation's very important, and it's a new birth.
Yes. So anyway, it's the spiritual master does take that debt from the disciple to one degree or another, whatever it may be, but it is a very complex situation to try to understand.
Yes, exactly. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, trying to understand the laws of karma impossible. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Hare Krishna, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.